And hello, everybody. We are now on part 3 of our notes on the Revolutionary War. And what we're going to be talking about today are the rising tensions and then the outbreak of war in this segment of the video. I have here a map. This is not found in your textbook, but it's a map basically of the actions that took place during the French and Indian War. The French and Indian War is named because the combatants were the French and many Indian tribes along in the Hudson Valley and also along the Ohio River Valley, who were aligned with the French against the English, and this included the colonists. You can see right here that George Washington led an army and fought a few battles. The war was fought from 1756 to 1763. It's also known as the 7 Years' War. And this war was basically for control of the northern part of the North American continent, the northeast part. France had this section here, and it was called New France. English territories were here, along with the colonies. The war was very bitterly fought, particularly along the frontier of the American colonies, where French forces, usually small groups working with Native American tribes, were attacking colonial outposts. And so you can see it, there were many forts that were built along here to protect the colonies. The war was very expensive and led eventually to an English victory, which was, in a sense, good news for the colonists, that they would have stability. It was bad news for the French, who basically were cast out of North America. And in some ways it was very bad news for the Native American tribes who had aligned with the French, although the English did not have the same policy that America would later on in such an aggressive aggressive expansion into Native American territory. The English were a little slower in that. They wanted to keep the colonies small, but the colonists kept on expanding out west into new territory, wanting new opportunities, new financial opportunities in particular, and that meant that the expansion to the west was infringing upon Native American lands, which would lead to more tension, as you know. So I'm now in the textbook, and you probably will want to look at some of these as you're taking notes. A lot of these are going to be your vocabulary and also will help you answer some of the questions. So you're going to also have to be kind of following along here in your notes, and we're talking about the discontentment in the colonies. All right. So basically what happened is you have growing tensions, and that's what we're going to be talking about right now for a few minutes. The tensions were caused because England was bankrupt. They had spent a lot of money to win this war. They had to send troops and ships all the way from England to North America. War is very expensive. And basically, the war had just totally drained the economy. And George and his advisors insisted that the colonists pay the cost of this war, including troops that were going to be stationed. This is a common conversation we have today with the United States, having troops all over the world. Who should pay the bill? The Parliament was mixed on it, but George got his way with Parliament, and so Parliament started passing a series of taxes. The first was the Sugar Act. The Stamp Act is a vocabulary term, and you can look it up and see what it does, and that will give you your answer. Basically, anything that was a document, newspapers, pamphlets, even playing cards, decks of playing cards, would have a seal on it, and it would be taxed. The colonists now were furious because they were not represented in Parliament, and they said taxation without representation is tyranny, so they dissented. No taxation without representation was a theme of the colonists. Since they had no representatives in Parliament, they believed Parliament had no right to tax them. And you start having a series of violent acts. In 1770, as the protests start to rise, you have what's called the Boston Massacre, which is basically colonists started throwing snowballs, stones at the colonists, and firing broke out, and some Americans were killed. This only inflamed the anger in the colony. And you see here a meeting of people, they're talking as they start talking about independence. A famous act was the tea tax, which led to the Boston Tea Party, where thousands of barrels of English tea were thrown overboard. The funny thing is that the English tea was less expensive than other teas that colonists started to buy. They stopped buying the British tea because of a protest over the tax, and then they basically threw the tea into the harbor. This led to the British closing off Boston Harbor, which killed the economy of Boston. Also, troops now were stationed in Boston, and they were staying in private houses. American colonists were forced to house British soldiers in their cramped quarters, and this led to more and more tension. Now, there's an activity that we're going to be doing together today toward the end of class, so you can just look at it now. And this activity basically shows the first or second Continental Congress. These were meetings where the grievances that the colonists had toward England were discussed, and some of the key players are listed there. I want to go a little bit longer on this video. I don't like to make these too long, so we're just going to exit out of here. And we're going to stop today on this, and we're going to stop right here, but you should have had some good information. So this is your third video on the American